Hey everybody, thank you for stopping back to my channel, Lady T's Things That Bling, Crafting and Creating with Lupus. Well, yesterday I did the video with that mask right there. I showed you how I did it from start to finish. And I also showed you this mask, but I didn't show you how I did it with the hole in it. However, we'll show you that on this video. I just used a template and put the hole in it and cut it out as normal. Now what I'm going to do is put the flap on, and what you have to do is get a piece of material, a scrap piece of material, and center it like you want it on the mask, how you want it to go over the hole. You have to make sure there's room at the top and the bottom for when your client opens their mask, and when they close it back, there won't be any gaps in between. These flaps actually have 2 layers. I don't use one because it's too flimsy when you use one, but when you double it, it's a little more sturdy. But right now I'm just working with the bottom part of the 2 flaps. And you'll see why in a little bit. If you can do this part without making markings on there, that would be good, because after I looked at the video again, I did see that once you flip it over, the markings are there. However, you can do it without the markings. I just do it because my perception is not good as far as when I'm trying to make things straight. So I have to have some type of guide for me. However, I will use something else besides marker. So that's my scrap material where I'm making the second part of the flap. Just cutting it to size to the size of the first flap, because I'll be doing the flap in 2 steps, because you have to do the original flap and then you put the second flap on to hide the flaws on the first flap, and you'll see what I mean. And just a little bit of information about lupus. Sometimes it's very difficult for us to work with our hands because our joints swell or inflamed. So our hands swell, and there's a lot of pain associated with the swelling. Like arthritis, like rheumatoid arthritis, and sometimes it's really bad. So that's just a little bit of information about what we deal with lupus. Now you see I'm trying to put the flap on. I want everything to be right on here, so You want to make sure you're putting it on the right side, because if you make a mistake and put it on the wrong side, you have to do it again or either create a new mask. And again, I'm using Stitch Witchery. I got it from Amazon because it's virtually impossible to get materials for sewing here in Philadelphia. I've been to almost every Walmart in the area and nothing. No material, no thread, no needles, nothing, because there are multiple people, hundreds of people making masks now, which is great because we want to stay safe. Now here I'm trying to secure the Velcro to the flap, and I ironed it down with the hem tape, the Stitch Witchery. But the Stitch Witchery is good, but it's not a very secure hold. So what I'm going to do is stitch it on there because it's not a very secure hold. Now I put the first part of the Velcro on, attached it to the top. Now I'm attaching it to the other part of the mask with the Stitch Witchery. And please be careful with the Velcro, because you don't want to put the iron directly on the Velcro because it will melt. Trust me, I've made that mistake. I'm trying to keep you from doing that. Do not iron the Velcro. Make sure there's a covering over the Velcro before you put the Stitch Witchery on, please. Now I'm cutting off the excess material. You don't need all of that. Checking to make sure it's the right placement. Now I'm going to stitch it on there. Now you know I already used the Stitch Witchery, but that's not secure enough for me. So I'm stitching it. And somebody might say, well, why didn't you just stitch it and leave out the step with the Stitch Witchery? That's the way I do it. And again, I have trouble sometimes with perception and trying to get angles right and making sure things are straight. So I have to do what works for me, because let me tell you, I want my stuff to be right. So that's the way I do it. However, if you're great at sewing and you're great at making things straight and keeping them straight, you can skip the step with the Stitch Witchery. That's the first part of the flap that I put on. I'm just adding stitches to it so that won't come off, because I just had the Stitch Witchery on there. And again, Stitch Witchery is good. However, if you're going to be pulling the mask open repeatedly, then it'll start pulling off, and I don't want that. And I'm telling you these tips because I've already been through it, and I just want you to be great and be safe. And drop me a hint if you have another way to do this with the flap. Drop me a hint to make it even more easier to do this. I feel like there could be some steps that I could do better. However, this is what I'm doing right now because this is what I know to do. But as I continue to make the mask, I will continue to make adjustments because Rome wasn't built in a day. So now I'm using several pieces of stitch witchery to place on the flap so that I can put the top portion of the flap on. And there you have it. I'd like to take this time to thank you for watching this video. Please like, share, and subscribe if you haven't already. And remember, during this pandemic, to be safe wherever you go and whatever you do. All right, Lady T signing out. God bless. See you next time.